Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Haverford Township Board of Commissioners meeting July 11th, 2016. Before we get started this evening, I just want to make two announcements. Prior to this meeting, the Board of Commissioners had a meeting as an executive session to discuss a couple legal issues. In addition, unfortunately, our President of the Board of Commissioners, Chris Connell, is ill and will not be with us this evening. And our Vice President, Mr. Oliva, is actually away on vacation visiting his mother in Florida. Therefore, the board is going to need to appoint someone to run or to chair tonight's meeting. So I'll be starting the meeting off with roll call, opening prayer, pledge allegiance, and then the board then will make a decision on who will chair the meeting. So at this time, I'll start with our roll call. Commissioner D'Amelio?
Present.
Mr. McCluskey?
Present.
Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Holmes?
Here.
Mr. McGarrett?
Here.
Mr. Wexler?
Here.
And again, Mr. Oliva and Mr. Connor will not be here this evening. This time, I would ask you all stand for opening prayer by Reverend David Stitt Bethune from Lanark Presbyterian Church.
Good evening, Commissioners and fellow citizens. It's always a privilege and honor to be with you to offer these opening prayers. And this morning, as I was thinking about the last time that I was here last October, I remembered asking you to indulge me in a moment of silence. We were responding to some violence that had occurred in some of our schools across the country. Given the events of the last week and the horrible violence that we've observed, I thought we might need to do something like that again. But I think silence hasn't gotten us what we've wanted. So if you'll indulge me again in the wake of Baton Rouge and St. Paul and Dallas, take a moment not to look down, not to look away, but to look at your neighbor in the face. Look and see the face of the person next to you, and then glance at the faces across the room from you, that you might see one another, perhaps with new eyes. We are not all of the same faith. Christians, we believe that as human beings, we are all of us in our beautiful diversity are made in the image of God, that we all have a little bit of God in our faces. We need each other. We are essential to each other. We can't get by without each other. Rather than silence, when we're looking for answers, maybe we ought to look at one another and begin to ask hard questions and to talk together. I'll invite you now to join with me in asking for God's blessing on this meeting. Holy God, we again have experienced that living is hard, that policing is hard, that governing is hard, much harder than it should be. We are polarized by politics, name-calling, finger-pointing, hand-wringing, blaming, the pointing of guns, systematic failures, constantly having to pull ourselves up after another injustice or another unfairness. We wish that killing were just as hard, but it seems to come all too easily. So may we be reminded, O God, that we share your image, that we need one another. May we be reminded that all life is far too precious and far too fleeting. May we be reminded that we are all human, that we all make mistakes, but that we are unsatisfied just to let them go, and that we will do all that we can in our power to make them right. May we disagree in love. May we challenge each other in love. May we work for reasonable solutions, even sometimes unreasonable solutions, in love, so that in this meeting, our commissioners may meet civility and kindness and charity in each other. And may those who come with business meet kindness and charity and know that we are all doing the very best we can. May we bless each other with smiles, being grateful for those who give of themselves so that our lives are easier, for those who pick up trash and yard waste, for those who run to the firehouse at the sound of a siren to check out smoke alarms or pots left on the stove, or unattended barbecue grills. For those who patrol the streets and stand in harm's way and rescue lost cats and find missing children. And yes, for those that must vote to make it all happen by paying the township bills and the payroll. All of this is hard, but we can do it well. Smile on us, O God. Smile on us. Amen.
Amen.
Chief?
I pledge allegiance to the
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, before we proceed with the agenda items, does any of the members of the board wish to make a recommendation on chairing them?
Mr. Township Manager and Secretary, I make a motion to have you run the meeting as the chair tonight.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sure about that?
Yeah.
Quick. Well, therefore, maybe I gotta add something to the agenda, an increase for Larry Gentili. First item on the agenda is our police department promotion, so I'd like to call Mrs. Janet Pacella from the Civil Service. Mrs. Pacella?
The Civil Service Commission is submitting to the board 2 certified lists for approval. One is to fill the vacancy for lieutenant, and one is to fill the vacancy for sergeant. So I'm going to distribute to you the list for the sergeants.
Lieutenant?
Voting on. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's for the lieutenant. This is the list for filling the vacancy for the lieutenant.
Are you gonna do one at a time, or are you gonna give us both lists?
No, I'm gonna do it one at a time.
One at a time. Okay. So after the board receives the list, I'll need a motion from one of the board members to accept the list.
Mr. Gentili.
Make a motion to accept the list.
Can't hear
A
you.
second.
Yeah, but you have to approve the list first.
And I'll take any discussion. I'll take a roll real quick. Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Names I'm submitting in first rank is James Kelly, second is Eugene Nolan, third is Kevin Redding.
Okay. Yes, sir.
To make a motion to accept James Kelly.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll take the roll. Mr. D'Amelio?
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. McCluskey?
James Kelly.
Mr. Siegel?
James Kelly.
Mr. Lewis?
James Kelly.
Mr. Holmes?
Sergeant Kelly.
Mr. McGarity?
James Kelly.
And Mr. Wexler?
Sergeant Kelly.
Congratulations, Lieutenant. Lieutenant, congratulations.
Mr. Chairman, if I can indulge me for a minute,
Certainly. Lieutenant James Kelly.
is a lifelong resident of Haverford Township. He's here with his wife Cynthia, his mother Lorraine, and his 3 daughters Laura, Lindsay, and Lainey. He's a graduate of Cardinal O'Hara and Millersville University with a Bachelor of Arts degree. Jim was hired July 7th, 2000, and was assigned to the Patrol Division. Promoted to Sergeant July 25th, 2005. If you see a thread here, it's all in July that Jim gets hired, promoted, and promoted. So he has received a Heroism Award and numerous letters of thanks and recognition from our residents. He's a member of the Delaware County Major Incident Response Team. He's a team leader and supervisor of the Haverford Police Honor Guard. So when you see our Honor Guard marching down on Haverford Township Day on Darby Road, or when they're down at Phillies game or any other event, Jim has usually organized it all. He volunteers at the Hilltop Little League and serves on the board of Addie's Angels Foundation. And Jim is a graduate of the 161st class of the FBI Elitist Supervisor Training Class. So I present Lieutenant James Kelly.
Yeah, you never know. That's always charming.
Larry, are you on the police committee? Are you on the police committee?
I don't think so. Am I? That would be news to me.
You are? We should go up there. Should be a commissioner in there. Mr. Chairman, can the members of the police committee here go up there and take a picture with them? This should be one of.
Absolutely.
Is that all right?
Sure.
Jimmy, I think you're on it, and Andy, you're on it.
So you were something to look at.
Sure. I like public access.
Yeah.
This is the family.
Oh, that was perfect. What's that? I'm looking actually to see who's on it.
That's your opportunity here.
Ms. Patel?
Okay, now that we have appointed a lieutenant, we now have a vacancy for a sergeant. And I believe you all have that list.
I don't have
We have to approve.
Yes. I'll need a motion to
We don't have the
accept
list.
the, you don't,
Have the lieutenant list.
We don't have it. We only have lieutenant.
Yes, it all. No,
Is that all?
they all have.
We don't have it.
Oh, it stopped here.
Well, let's, if you,
once that list is been distributed, I'll need a motion.
Motion to accept the list?
Second?
Mr. D'Amelio?
Sergeant.
Yes, I second it.
Take them roll, I'm sorry.
What's that?
He was
Take them
taking
roll to
roll.
accept.
Yes or no?
Yes, I said yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarry?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Motion.
I said yes.
ranking, first place is James Reynolds,
That's right.
DeSantis, Edward Mintzer.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to accept James Reynolds.
Second. Nope.
I'm sorry, who seconded? Bill? Okay, any discussion? Mr. D'Amelio?
Officer Reynolds.
Mr. McCluskey?
James Reynolds.
Mr. Siegel?
James Reynolds.
Mr. Lewis?
James Reynolds.
Mr. Holmes?
Officer Reynolds.
Mr. McGarity?
Officer Reynolds.
And Mr. Wexler.
Officer Reynolds.
Congratulations.
Sergeant James Reynolds lives in Haverford Township, and he's here with his wife Lindsay. His father, SEPTA Police Captain Jim Reynolds, who's here with his wife Diane. He's here, wife Lindsay, and his mother Veronica is here. His uncle Paul Reynolds of the Stone Harbor, New Jersey Police Department, who's the chief there. Sergeant Thomas Reynolds from the Yaden PD, and other family members. So we have a law enforcement family. We're very happy for Jimmy. He's a graduate of Bonner High School, a Bachelor of Arts from Penn State University, received his master's degree from St. Joe's University in Criminal Justice. Jim has been assigned to Patrol Division, served 1-year rotation in Detective Division, completed basic SWAT school, is a field training officer and a member of the Delaware County Major Incident Response Team. He's a member of the Police Honor Guard Unit and is also assigned to the Delaware County Drug Task Force. He's received many letters of thanks and recognition for residents and is a recipient of a distinguished unit commendation. Jim, congratulations.
Yeah, sure.
Congratulations, Sergeant. Chief Iola?
1 second, one more picture and then we'll. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, first I would acknowledge the Civil Service Commission for all their work. We spent many hours with them interviewing the candidates. It's a very long and difficult process to go through the interviews because all the officers are great candidates. So it's difficult to choose who when you're ranking. So Civil Service did a lot of work on the entry level over the past year and 2 promotions. So from the Police Department to Civil Service, we appreciate their help and their hard work on that. So. This is the Commissioners or residents of Haverford Township. This past week has been a difficult time for all members of law enforcement, with the tragedy in Dallas, Texas, and the anti-police sentiment throughout the country. We as law enforcement all feel the pain and grieve in our own quiet way. It was extremely hard for myself and all of our officers who had to face our shifts on Friday morning. But what we saw from early in the morning into the entire weekend made our day just a little bit easier. The outpouring of support from our community, young and old, who called in, stopped our officers on the street just to say thanks, cards, food, and just a smile and a wave, meant so very much to our police department. The members of the Haverford Township Police Department work hard on maintaining relationships with our community and care about what we do every day. I want to publicly tell everyone that we are very grateful for the support and that means so very much to us. So from the police department to our community, it means a lot when you say and stop and say thank you to a police officer. It's been very, very difficult. So from me to all of us and anybody who's going to watch this, it's a sincere thank you. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you again. Congratulations to both of you, and to the families, we sincerely appreciate the support and dedication that you provide to those two gentlemen, and I'm looking forward to working with both of you in the near future. Prior to us, we actually have a couple presentations, but I'm going to ask that we take a very brief 3-minute recess so our IT department can set up for the next presentation. So if we wanted to sneak out, now is the time to do it, so thank you. We'll continue on with the agenda. The next item would be our presentation from Mr. Pannoni and Mr. Snyder from Pannoni Associates, our traffic adaptive demonstration. As you recall, we have such a program that's being implemented at 3 of our locations, and we have a number of ARLI grants in to incorporate this similar, well, very similar type system along Westchester Pike. We would hear if we are awarded that grant, I believe, Dave, sometime by the end of the summer.
There's 2 of them actually.
There's 2 of them.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, good.
So as Larry mentioned before, the board a couple of years ago approved what was called an ARLI grant, red light grant, where we submitted on behalf of the township an application to put what's called a traffic adaptive system in on our triangle. We call it the triangle. Township line, Westchester Pike, and Doggy Road. Tough intersection to coordinate everything. So we submitted a grant application, and we were successful, about $180,000, and we're going to put a traffic adaptive system in at all 3 of those intersections. It's literally being installed now. Mike Schneider, everybody probably remembers Mike. Mike's going to walk through it in a little more detail, but right now, if you drive down through that intersection, you'll see cameras up on the mast arms. They're sitting about anywhere from about this high to about 1.5 feet high. They look like, they almost look like preemption devices. What that system does is it allows the township and the police and PennDOT to be more reactive in real time on how they control the traffic. In addition to what we're doing, as I mentioned, in addition to that triangle, we got 2 applications in. One's a CMAQ grant that we put in almost 6 or 7 months ago to put the traffic adaptive through the rest of Westchester Pike. It would go from the triangle all the way down to Marple Township. And we also submitted another grant application, another ARLI grant, a couple weeks ago for the same thing, the traffic adaptive on Westchester Pike. So Mike's going to walk through it in a little more detail. What you see on camera here, by the way, is real-time, live pictures at Route 1 and Route 202, Chad's Ford Concord area. We put that in maybe 9 months ago, Mike, maybe 2 years ago, 2 years ago, and it was interesting. It was successful enough at reducing traffic at that intersection that Delaware County Times wrote an article about it. The article was so well read that everybody started using the intersection again, and the queues went back to where they were. But there's a lot more cars going through that intersection. So Mike will walk through a little nuts and bolts of what the traffic adaptive does.
Yeah, and just as Dave mentioned, this is the intersection of 202 and 1, and this is the exact same system that we're installing now at the Triangle, and the same system we want to install along Westchester Pike. And it's a real change from how we did things previously, where we counted and kind of analyzed traffic and developed timings. There's no preset timings associated with this system. How it works is there's a video camera for each approach that we're seeing live feed from now. And the video camera, we actually draw detection zones in each of the lanes. And the system, through those detection zones, knows how many cars are in each lane and how long each individual car has been there. And then the system actually runs an algorithm to decide who should get green time. So in addition to that, the intersections along the corridor or next to each other all communicate with each other, and they send information back and forth kind of when they're releasing traffic that's heading in the direction of another intersection. So the processor at each intersection takes all that data and decides when to give green time to each approach and how much green time to give to each approach. And we've had a lot of success with it. One of the neatest things about it is that we actually log into PennDOT's Traffic Control Center out in District 6, and then we can bring up each intersection. We can bring up each camera at each intersection in live real time and view it. And it really helps us address complaints, it really helps us make adjustments, and it really helps us look at incidents. Because not only can we view this live, we can actually record the video and set recordings for any of these cameras that we'd like. In addition, the system actually logs everything that's going on. So if you go back 2 months, someone said I waited for 2 minutes at an intersection, I can actually bring it up and it shows every second of every day which movement had a green light and how long that green light was. So we found it to be really effective in addressing complaints and looking into issues that are brought up from the public. A couple things that the township really should be aware of with these systems, and probably I won't say the biggest issue, but the biggest change for everyone is that it doesn't rely on a set phasing pattern. So today, you have an intersection where the green arrows come up for the left turn lanes, then the through traffic comes up, then the side street goes. This decides which phase to bring up based on where the traffic is. So that's a little bit of an adjustment for people. You get some calls from the public saying, I was sitting there, it skipped me, it skipped my phase. We get that a lot. That usually dies down after a few weeks when people realize they're getting through the intersections a lot quicker. And if it's explained to them, we put notifications on websites and in newsletters and that sort of thing to kind of advise the public that the system's coming in. PennDOT's fantastic with it. They have this. We're at about 150 intersections in the state that now have this technology. So PennDOT knows how to deal with those calls as well. Just to look at the screen, you can see kind of the purple detection zones lighting up.
Mike, what's the purple mean? It's just,
That's just a detection. That means there's different types of detection. So that's presence. It means there's a car sitting in that lane, or it's a car on the approach. You can't see because it's not turned on because it would look really clumsy, but there's little detection bars that go all the way back as far as the camera can see, so that it knows where the actual traffic is and how far back the queue is. So it kind of programs that all in as it decides where to put the green time.
yeah, what's really neat is that you get to see what's green and the red when it's.
So yeah, the bars at the bottom, that just means that approach has a green. They're just mimicking the traffic signal that's up in the air. It's showing that it's green, yellow, red. And then, like I said, with the intersections adjacent to it, so you see all this actuation going on that it's reading, and then, it's saying it's tough to read, but here, it's counting down now. It's saying 53 seconds, and what that number is the intersection back here is going to release in about that time because it kind of figures out how far the distance is a group of traffic. So it's telling this light, you better get ready to turn this approach green, and about that time, it's down to 35 seconds. So in half a minute, this should turn green, and we should see a platoon of cars coming up here because it was released from the other intersection.
Just kind of this question.
Sure.
Dave, if this is Westchester Pike going west, right, and this is where the church is, because a lot of residents have difficulty coming out, this side rather, coming out because there's so much traffic, will the cameras be able to see? I mean, you'll be able to know how much traffic's going westbound. Would you be able to see that intersection?
Will the cameras look up the side street?
Yeah, because that's the problem. Problem's coming out of the side streets, turning left on the Westchester Pike to get to the Blue Route, and they're blocking the boxes there.
Yeah, it'd be a unique situation to look at something other than an approach to the intersection because we could detect it. If it's on the camera, we can detect it and we can set up a detection zone to know that there's a vehicle there. But then what do you do with that information, as far as we do have installations in where we have separate cameras with queue detection. So if you have a ramp to 476 or so that's starting to back up onto 476, it could trigger the signal to kind of release that and give an extra long cycle to let those out. So it could be something like that. Where we look to do,
Yeah, I think that would be great because we're having real difficulties making a left on the Westchester Pike.
It's one of our biggest, Mike says it better than me, our biggest challenge is left turns. Even left at Eagle Road on Westchester Pike. Left on the Pike one of our biggest challenges. This, by the way, will be in the police station, right?
Yeah,
This
well,
video.
we'll get, we'll have, usually about 3 computers that will allow the system to be installed on. It's sensitive because you can change things from here. So typically, manager, public works, and police department, and then the engineer has it on their computer, because I can actually go up. There's manual controls here. I can click on this, and I can change any approach to green from here. So if you have an incident, you can actually control a number of intersections, similar to how you would have a police button out at the intersection remotely from the desktop to say you have an incident and you need to just eastbound flush out Westchester Pike. You can actually stop everything, go to the intersections, and just flush eastbound out for as long as you want, to be honest, and then go back and click it and just say return to normal operation, and it returns. One of the concerns I had when it first came on was, what if a camera goes down? Is that there's no pre-programmed timings. So if you lose a camera, it doesn't know who's there, what does it do? So what the system does is it logs 30 days of data continuously. So if a camera goes down, it puts a minimum recall, so it brings a phase up, but then if it's a Tuesday at 4:30 in the afternoon, it knows typically how many cars, it just goes back to an average of how many vehicles are in each lane on a Tuesday at 4:30. So it kind of puts in fake traffic to keep the system going. It also sends an alert to all the users that a camera's down. So we get alerts that the camera's down. Actually, we haven't had too much maintenance. The only time I've gotten alerts is fog. So if you have dense fog and the camera's realizing it can't see too well, it goes into fog mode or camera off mode, where it relies on historical data to run the intersection. And we've really had no hiccups with that. It's run really well in that historical data.
Next thing from our end, again, we're installing this now. Sometime in the next 2 to 6 weeks, it'll start to get activated at the intersection. There'll be some anomalies where people see something different, like there'll be a phase that happened today but won't happen tomorrow. So we'll work closely with Larry and the police and public works and make sure we run out ahead of this. And otherwise, I think by early fall we should be up and running at the triangle.
Yeah, we'll do a good 3-week period there where it actually, once the cameras are up and we can view it like this, we'll keep the timings running that are there now, and just kind of run the program in the background to see how it reacts and make sure it's running pretty well. Then once it's turned on, another 2 weeks where we're staring at it, PennDOT's staring at it from their control center. The company, Rhythm Engineering out of Kansas, that created this and sells it, they stare at it too, and we all make sure it's fine-tuned and run pretty well.
We use PennDOT fiber optics, so it's not a candidate for every intersection in the township. We couldn't put it out here because there's no fiber optics up and down Eagle Road at this time. There's fiber optics up and down Westchester Pike. That's why we're focusing on Westchester Pike.
And it's not right for every intersection. It's not an inexpensive system, and some intersections run fairly well with typical loop detection or typical video detection. It's more where you have major capacity issues that this has really been used.
Any questions?
Okay, anybody has any other questions for Mike and Dave? Guys, thank you very much. We're looking forward to getting this up and running. Okay, the next item, we have our Township Auditor update from Mr. Gary Zlotnick. Gary?
Yeah, I'm pulling that some new trips on that. Almost out of here. All yours.
Thanks, Gary.
Good evening. I reviewed the disbursements for the period commencing June 15th and ending July 11th. I raised certain questions of our finance director. All the questions were answered to my satisfaction. Therefore, in my opinion, there were no irregularities for the period in question.
Does anyone have any questions for Gary? Gary, thank you. Okay, next item would be the citizens forum, and we will start with our registered speakers, and we have one registered speaker this evening, and that would be Dr. Levin. Sir.
Doing better. soaking in ice. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Gentili.
You're welcome.
My name is Mike Levin. I'm an environmental scientist for the last 50 years, and that is my passion. I'd like to make an offer to start with. My offer is I will accept phone calls or email messages from anyone in the township who has an environmental problem, and I will handle it in exactly the same way, pro bono, that I have done this project, and am continuing with this project. My email address is, my website is at the top, and it's interactive. I'm characterizing in this report that rain began as a drizzle in the early morning of June 16th, and this is what happened to Harvard 7. There's one correction in this before it goes up on my website, and that is there are 6 properties there, not 7. This became a lake, as you can see in the first diagram, and you can get an idea of scale by the individual and the piece of backhoe equipment in the background. This is about 25 feet by about 15 feet, and it started off as being nothing more than an excavation of an underground storage tank, which had still in place. As you can see from the bottom illustration, the water is scummy, and there is an oil sheen at the top. On the back pages is a detail of that oil sheen, and at the bottom you can see that there is a 12-inch pipe, which is probably a stormwater pipe, that shows up in 2 of the illustrations. This is characteristic of this site. Everything on each one of the sites of the 2.95 acres is a special circumstance. I feel that Haverford probably allowed a private party to do this site because they believed it unlikely that funds could be obtained to correct the soil problem or remove it in any other way. I want you to know that the rules for declaring a hazard ranking score have evolved from EPA over the years, and it is possible that the site would have qualified. But with buildings on it which are being added at this point, it's very unlikely. It's likely to fall to the individual owners. I mentioned before both electrical resistivity, tomography known as ERT, and ground penetrating radar could have been used to...
Excuse me, Dr. Levin, I'm going to give you the 3 more minutes you would get for and then I really have to cut it off at that point, okay?
Thank you. I will. Please don't interrupt my final thought, though, which will be short. Ground penetrating radar and electrical resistivity will work best when the soils are sandy and when they're not waterlogged and when they're not acid and when they're not dense silts. So the possibility of using them to determine the characteristics of the anomalies that are at the site, such as underground storage tanks, pipes, rocks, anything else, is very limited. Harvard 7 as a whole is just a contaminated site, and it's contaminated in parts differently. I am wondering how stormwater is going to be handled off this site, because if it does flow to Darby Creek, it's sure to contaminate it. Residential properties that don't pass DEP's final requirement as individuals would not be accepted for their Act 2. And the only perfect knowledge that DEP has is the perfect knowledge that they're not going to be sued for anything that happens out there. It's going to fall to someone else. The futures of Harvard 7 residences under these circumstances would be very doubtful. The resale would be threatened.
the property owners could lose their assets. The same contamination problem could resurface, and the properties themselves could experience vapor intrusion. Thank you very much. I hope that this is something that you are interested in. You should be. Your enablers have enabled you to bring this project to fruition, and it has not been the best idea from the start. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
If there are any questions, I'll be happy to address them in the time that I have remaining.
Want to have any questions for Dr. Levin?
No.
Thank you, Dr. Levin. Okay, that concludes our registered speakers. At this point, I will open it up to the audience for 20 minutes, and I remind the audience this would be for agenda items only. Anyone on this side like to bring anything up? Anyone on the right? Okay, that conclude our citizens forum. Again, Dr. Levin, thank you very much for your presentations. I'm sure the board will review those documents that you forwarded me as well. At this point, number 6.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of June the 14th, 2016.
Second.
Okay. Second by Dan. Any discussion? Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Okay. Approval of the warrants?
Mr. President.
Commissioner?
President, I move we approve warrant number 7 of 2016, totaling $2,916,391.22, comprising the general and sewer fund payroll for June 16 of 2016 in the amount of $639,131.35. The general and sewer fund payroll for June 30, 2016 in the amount of $617,598.49. General fund disbursements number 7 of 2016 in the amount of $1,361,147.22. Sewer fund disbursements number 7 of 2016 in the amount of $131,454.57. Community Development Block Grant Fund disbursement of 2016, I'm not sure what number, I'm assuming it's 7 of 2016, in the amount of $35,345.37. Home Grant Fund number 7 of 2016 in the amount of $3,230. Capital Projects Fund disbursement number 7 of 2016 in the amount of $120,304.29, and a credit card statement ending June 27, 2016 in the amount of $8,179.93.
Second.
Mr. President, our Township Auditor has been through these warrants. Any questions that were raised by him were brought to the attention of our financial staff and answered to his satisfaction, and he having no problems with these warrants, nor do I. I recommend that they be approved.
Discussion?
Yes, second, Leonard.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McGarity. Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Next item would be our general obligation bond. This evening, we have from PFM, our financial advisor, Mr. Schlesinger. Am I saying that right, Jamie? Okay.
Mr. President, should I move the ordinance into consideration first before we invite Mr. Schlesinger up to speak?
That's probably appropriate, thank you.
All right, let me do that. Let's see how fast I can read. Mr. President, I move we adopt the first reading of ordinance number P14 of 2016, authorizing the incurring of non-electoral debt by Haverford Township to finance the cost of certain capital projects of the township, providing for the issuance of a series of general obligation bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $12,500,000, appointing a paying fund and sinking fund depository and authorizing a paying agency agreement, setting forth provisions regarding the denominations, maturities, rates of interest, and terms of redemption for the bonds, and authorizing a book entry-only system therefore, providing for the registration, transfer, and exchange of the bonds, authorizing the sale of the bonds by private sale upon invitation, and authorizing the acceptance of a bond purchase proposal, authorizing the execution and delivery of the bonds, covenanting to budget and pay debt service on the bonds, and pledging the full faith and credit and taxing power of the township for the payment thereof. Establishing a sinking fund for the bonds, establishing a construction fund and a rebate fund, making certain covenants regarding federal income tax matters, authorizing the preparation and filing of a debt statement, borrowing-based certificate, debt exclusion proceedings, and a transcript of the proceedings for the issuance of the bonds, providing for the disposition of the proceeds of the bonds, providing for the form of the bonds, authorizing a preliminary and final official statement for the bonds, authorizing a financial guarantee insurance policy, and making certain agreements with the issuer of such policy, providing that the local government unit debt act shall apply to the bonds, providing that this ordinance shall be a contract with the holders of the bonds, authorizing certain additional actions, including the execution of a tax compliance agreement and a continuing disclosure agreement of the township, repealing inconsistent ordinances, and setting forth the effective date hereof.
Second.
Mr. President, I would now ask Mr. Schlesinger to provide us the details of the parameters bond ordinance that we have just moved into consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. I handed out a presentation. It's rather short, but it gives you a lot of information, so I can go through this, answer any questions you may have. As you're aware, you're in the middle of a number of projects that the township is moving forward with. We issued some debt a couple of years ago that started the process for your financings. We're on step 2, or we're planning on doing step 2 over the next month. So we're looking to finance approximately $10 million. As you heard earlier, we have a bond ordinance to consider for $12.5 million. So the first question you might ask is, why is it $12.5 million? This is considered a parameters ordinance, and what that means is it allows the township to provide us flexibility to do a number of things. One, to consider the sale at any time when market conditions prevail. Two, to allow us to structure the debt in a fashion depending on the condition, the interest rates we receive at the time of the sale, to meet the standards that we need to meet the state guidelines. So ultimately, although we're talking about $12.5 million of the borrowing amount, in real life, you're going to end up with approximately a $10 million financing at the time of the sale. This is simply for Laguda purposes, the state purposes, for filing the flexibility necessary to do what we need. Do you have any questions on that?
About that or other things?
Oh, there'll be other things as well, but please.
Yeah, well, I understand the parameters as it relates to maximum principal amount, but I don't understand the parameters as it relates to maximum interest rate, because it seems to me that 5.5% is so out of the ballpark. To give that kind of leeway, it seems to be not be responsible.
So, good question. So the 5.5%, again, this is just for purposes of filing with DCD. Our expectation here is the overall interest rate on this bond issue will be about 2.25%. So that's the current market condition. So we're going to get some coupon payments that will probably range between 1% and maybe 4%. But we have to have the parameters at a high enough number should we ever exceed it. It will not happen as part of this transaction. We have certain conditions that will fall under that. We want to have the maximum amounts.
Don't we want to have it at 4% or some lower number? I mean,
just in case, let's say the market collapses, next month, and we decide not to proceed with the financing. This will allow us to have it in place.
We might want to reconsider at 5.5,
of course,
though.
We will not do that at that point. We have the flexibility to authorize it and do the sale at that point. We'll be talking with the administration about it to go through that process. I fully do not expect that we'll have coupons above 5.5%.
We've never done this before.
I don't think so
have
either,
we?
but I just don't understand why
We've done this every time before.
Did we do this before? Has
Yeah.
it been that high?
Sometimes it's been 6%.
We have done the range. You do the range, significantly higher than what you expect to do, just so that if we're going to have 30 years of bonds here, And your shortest bonds are going to have your lowest interest rate. Your longest bonds are going to have your longer interest rate. You may have a higher interest rate, a coupon interest rate, but actually issue at an original issue discount or premium, which would make your face bond possibly 5.5%, but the actual interest rate you would end up paying on it, because a person would pay greater than 100% for the face value of that bond, might end up being an actual nominal rate of 4 or 3.5 or something like that. So, and at all times during this process, we can choose not to sell these bonds if the market takes a strange turn. But you've got to, he could say 5.5, and you could say, what about 5.25, and you could say 4. What you don't want to have happen is set a number, and one of our bond maturity needs to be a quarter above that number, because then we can't do it. And no matter what the occasion, like I said, I mean, you've got, when you price these bonds, you not only have a $100 bond at 5%, but you might sell a $100 bond for $95, and then it ends up generating a much bigger interest rate, an actual interest rate, as opposed to the face interest rate. Or somebody may pay $105 for that $100 bond because it has a higher coupon rate, but people are willing to pay more for it, which gives them a nominal rate less than that. So we have, for the last 3 or 4 bond issues that we've done, actually every bond issue I've been involved in since we went back out to the public in '09, maybe, Lara, we have started with a set of boundaries that we work within, and our bonds have always come well within them. So, I mean, you're doing variable rate. I mean, you're doing these kinds of deals. These are not variable rate. Didn't mean that.
Fixed.
These are fixed deals, but you've been doing these in numerous townships. Is anybody setting parameters lower than 5.5%?
No, typically, the good old days, we're probably doing 8%, but rates are so low right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen 12 back in the day when I was doing this work. You didn't get 12. Nobody agreed to that, but you set your parameters in advance, because we don't price these until the day we actually sell them to the market.
Yes, that's correct.
What's the maximum price parameter that you've set?
It's going to, based on the ordinance right now, it's a 95% to a buck to 110%.
Okay.
So that's the nature of both sides of it. More than likely, based on current conditions, since this is a long-term financing, more than likely we'll probably see some premium bonds. So we'll see the higher coupon, but the yields are really what matters. And I think that's what Mr. Holmes was trying to describe is
right.
The yield is what matters. And again, the overall yield, what our expectation is about 2.3% right now on a 30-year issue. And I should kind of hit to the next page. We are near historic lows, so this is really the right time. We say this every time, it seems like, but market rates are very, very good right now. Brexit has helped out long-term financings on interest rates such that's good for us, although the market's a little crazy in general. But from our perspective, this is a good thing. We've done some of the necessary things on our side by getting the rating already completed. You received the AA2 rating, which is what you've had in the past, so that's very strong. We've started the preliminary official statement. We're almost to that. Really what we're waiting for is getting through the legal process, essentially getting the necessary requirements to authorize the transaction, which is this is step 1. So once we do step 2, which will occur in August, we'd be able to sell any time after that. Our expectation, if nothing changes, we'll probably sell August 8th, August 9th. If things do change, we may push it off a little bit. It all depends on what's out there in the market and where the conditions are at that time. But if I were to say today, are we ready to go, we're pretty much there, and we think the market's very, very good. So I would say within the next month, we'll be ready to go.
Thank you.
And again, I will turn to page 3, as I mentioned a couple times, and this maybe Amy can jump in on this. This is the expectation of what the overall interest rates are. If you look at column 3, these are what we call the yields, ultimately. We're going to see some coupons, 1, 2, 3, 4%, but the yields are really what matters here. So as you can see, we think the rates are going to range between 1% down to 2.48%. So as a blended yield on this transaction, it's about 2.25% on a 30-year issue. So again, that's pretty fantastic in this current market. So as a dollar and cent in annual debt service, it's approximately $465,000, $470,000 a year, which is less than what we expected when we first started talking about this. So again, all good things are happening right now in the market to keep these payments as low as possible. Again, this would just be step 2 of the next step, next financing, which could happen next year.
So any more questions for Jamie?
No, not for him.
I assume that all bonds that we issue are tax-free?
Yes.
Okay, we would never issue a taxable.
No, not unless you're necessary, because these type of projects are general municipal projects. These are all considered tax-free financings.
Yeah.
If you did something, if you built a building, you put a Wawa in it, you'd have to do a portion of it taxable.
Taxable.
But in this case, this is general municipal work, so you're able to do it tax-free, and that's why we're getting such fantastic.
You might be able to
interest rates.
incorporate a Wawa, it's so close.
Any other questions for Jamie? Jamie, thank you very much.
Would that change your mind, Mr. Lewis? If we put a
mega
Wawa in
Wawa.
it? Yeah. We had a drive-through coffee place for you in there, would that make a difference?
Maybe donuts.
All right,
I don't
thank you.
think so.
If you don't have any other discussion, I'll take the
No,
roll.
Larry, I do.
Yep.
So the debt service, we have to make close to $500,000 for the budget next year, right?
Correct.
Okay, and we still have a bond from last year.
Correct.
Okay, so what's that debt service now? About the same thing? So we're looking at $1 million. So we were looking for, in addition to what you would need, what percentage of, what are we looking at? Possibly 2%?
1.88% increase.
1.88, including last year's bond?
No, just for this year.
Just for this year? But you still have to make up the debt service from last year's.
That's already been budgeted.
It's already been budgeted? Okay. So it's almost 2%, right?
Now, it is worth noting on page 6, the debt service, the interest rate here is, again, it's factored at 5.5. Our expectation is an overall yield of about 2.3. So our interest charge is going to be about cut in half if it goes the way we expect it to be.
Right.
Page 3 is more likely what you're going to see in real life.
Just a question about the P14 2016 has a parameter of 12 million in there for the municipal services building, and then it has 300,000 for traffic signals and 200,000 for park improvements. Larry, if you could just touch briefly on the 300,000 and the $200,000 piece, what's that?
The
what's that for?
300,000 for lights?
Yeah, and then for the parks as well.
Yeah, the park improvements would be any emergent playground equipment that we would need to make such improvements. We already have a park improvements fund, so it would supplement the park improvements fund. And I believe 80,000 of that, approximately 50 to 80,000 of that fund would go towards, if it's needed to go towards improving on the skate park.
Okay.
And I'm working with Mr. Denny on the actual needs. There's been a fundraising initiative that's been underway from the skate park folks, and that will continue until that such time. The traffic lights would be any type of the traffic adaptive systems that we need to match. As you would recall, again, the traffic adaptive, the RLE grant that we're doing on Westchester Pike,
Yeah.
I believe, Dave, was $900,000 or somewhere. About 800,000. So there would be a match, obviously. There may be needed some sort of monies that we need to budget if we need to go into that direction.
Okay. Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome. Okay. Any other discussion on that item? I'll take roll. Mr. D'Amelio.
No.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
No.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
No.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
4 to 3. Thank you. The
Oh, wait a minute, what happened to it?
new question, I'm sorry?
Did it pass?
Yeah, 4-3.
4-3, yeah.
Next item is the 2017 budget adoption schedule. It's something we do this time each year. Before you know, it'll
Mr.
be
President.
August.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the 2017 budget adoption schedule. And if you'll give me a minute to get to it, I will read it aloud.
You're too bad.
No, thanks. So, our presentation of the manager's budget to the Board of Commissioners will take place on or before Friday, October 28th, 2016. Our first special budget meeting of the board will be set for Monday, November the 21st at 7 p.m. And the second and final presentation adoption of the 2017 budget will take place at our regularly scheduled December meeting, Monday, December 12th, 2016.
Second.
Schedule is similar to schedules we have abided by in the past, and obviously is we have our legal requirements to pass a budget before the end of the year, or else at the start of the new year, the previous year's budget just renews, and there's a lot of ramifications that we don't ever want to deal with. So let's stick to this budget, fellas, and we'll get it done. So.
I'm confident that we'll be as successful as we've been in the past.
Yeah, look, if the past is any indication of the future, our incredible staff under Mr. Gentili's leadership will do what they've done for quite a few years now, which is get us a lot of information well in advance, and we'll have a lot of opportunities to speak and debate about the budget, and 2 good public meetings to talk about it and to adopt it.
Any other discussion on? Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Next item is number 10, outdoor dining.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the second reading of ordinance number P13, 2016, amending Chapter 182 zoning, Section 182-731, provisions of the outdoor dining regulations.
Second.
Okay, and this is a second reading. Any other discussion? Okay, if not, I'll call a roll. Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Next item, operating radio-controlled objects.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. D'Amelio?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number P15, 2016, establishing permitting requirements and regulations for operation of radio-controlled or uncontrolled model aircraft, rockets, or other flying objects in the township of Haverford.
Okay. A second. Anyone want to second it?
Second.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I can just give a little explanation. We've had, as this board is aware, I've been working with the police department and park and recs for a number of months now. We've had a couple incidents that we'd like to get such an ordinance underway. Since this was put on the agenda, we've had a discussion with the police department and park and recreation department. So there is some changes that needs to take place. So am I permitted to ask?
Move to
Mr.
table.
Gentile, I'd make a motion that we table this until you have more information and amend the requirements as you seem to fit with the police department.
Second.
We should, thank you.
And, right, I mean, and we should have a work session to discuss it.
And we will have a work session next month. So we-
The August work session.
Yes.
Motion to
Okay, so motion to
Table.
table to next month. Any other discussion? Take a roll.
Discussion.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
McGarity?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Traffic, first reading?
Mr. President, I move we adopt the first reading of ordinance number P16 of 2016 by establishing traffic restriction on the following highways. Establish a special purpose zone, parking zone in front of 711 George's Lane in Ardmore.
Second.
Any other discussion? Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Okay, storage facility plan.
Mr. Gentile, I make a motion to adopt resolution number 2014-2016, approving its revisions to our sewage facilities plan, Act 537 plan, by executing a sewage facilities planning module for the addition of 2 EDUs in the Darby Creek drainage system associated with the subdivision of the property at 1224 Steel Road, Havertown, Pennsylvania, demolishing and rebuilding the existing single-family dwelling, creating 2 new building lots.
Second.
You're going to build homes there, Bill?
I'm not, but there's a builder that is. It's the
No, I didn't
lots.
say you. I said, are they?
Yeah, they're going to build 2 homes on existing, they're tearing down an existing home on Steel Road, building 2 lots. It's a by right application from the zoning portion of it, and this is just a formality they have to go through to add this EDUs for the sewage module. This is not the one by Steel Field, as Mr. McGarry just asked me. This is up right behind Belfield Avenue.
So this is to allow extra sewage to go into the system, is that right?
Yeah, anytime you do a subdevelopment, you have to apply to the RHM for EDUs. And I've been at the meetings for RHM, and they have the capacity, so it's just a formality of requesting.
Well, I'm just a little surprised that they're saying they have capacity when they've come to this board many years ago saying that they have problems with that line.
The work
Or
that
put more in.
the work that they've done in our half of the township and there with the I&I has created, there are plenty there. With the abolishment of the development at Cardinal Crossing, there's more than enough capacity down that way.
I guess we need that tank after all.
This has nothing to do with overflow. This is just
You're going
sewage.
into the system, so.
This is sewage flow.
Well, it's not, yeah, it's not stormwater, but
Right.
I don't know, it just bothers me.
Anybody else have anything to discuss on that particular issue? Okay, Mr. D'Amelio?
I'm going to vote no.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Lot line change, 2125 East Park Road.
I'll read it. If Mr. Oliva's not here. I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-2016, approving the minor subdivision plan for James and Paula Krolaski, 21 East Park Road, Haverford Township, Delaware County, known as DC Folio numbers 22-02-00901-00, 22-02-00901-00, and Matthew Krolaski at 25 East Park Road, Haverford Township, Delaware County, and known as DC Folio number 22-02-00902-00, has been submitted to consolidate 3 parcels and by modifying the lot lines, resulting in Lot 1 containing 19,815 square feet and Lot 2 containing 16,463 square feet. The property is zoned R4 residential and is located in the 2nd Ward. The aforesaid plans were prepared by Jeffrey P. Turner, PLS, Collegeville, PA, dated May 14th, 2016, submitted to the recommendations and findings of the Planning Commission.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Okay, purchase of our recycling grant.
Mr.
equipment.
Chairman, motion to authorize the purchase of one Ransom's Cat 2016 Caterpillar Model 930M wheel loader under the Pennsylvania contract 4400011420 in the amount of $163,578.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Lewis seconded. Just to add to this, these items that we're purchasing under this grant, recall Gloria was successful in obtaining a grant approximately for $250,000. It's a $310,000, $309,000 grant total, but the township has to pay approximately 20% of that. So majority of this equipment all this equipment will total cost the township will be approximately $61,000. So phenomenal job on Gloria's part to pursue this grant. That's what this equipment's going to be. Does anyone have any questions regarding it? I'll take roll. Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Okay. Motion to authorize the purchase of one 2016 International Model 7400 6-x2 cab and chassis from Hunter's Truck and S&S under CoStar Contract 25-102 in the amount of $100,833.
Second.
Any other questions? Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Motion to authorize the purchase of one 2016 Gal Fab 75K roll-off heist from Grand Turk Equipment Company Incorporated under CoStar's 025-046 in the amount of $46,920.50.
Second.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
The point we're at the continuation of citizens forum. Again, this would be for now non-agenda items. Anyone in the audience have anything they'd like to bring up?
Earlier, there's discussion of the adaptive traffic light plan. It was effective on Westchester Pike, or would be effective. As you know, traffic in Havertown is at close to a standstill during peak business hours. Roads like Manoa Road have traffic jams that extend up to Westchester Pike. Darby Road in the morning is between Eagle Road and St. George's Lane, St. George Road. St. George's Church is packed. Getting across Darby Road to Lansdowne Avenue is crowded also. I wonder whether this adaptive plan could do something for the traffic jams that are occurring in Havertown particularly, as a start, to see whether this can be cleaned up in any way. I realize that in the presentation, it was primarily on the multi-lane roads, such as Westchester Pike, for 3 or 4 traffic lights. And I am aware that Eagle Road is another problem. To make a case in point, when I try to get out of Havertown in the morning, I have to consider whether I can get across any of those roads I've just mentioned. Manoa Road, Darby Road north and south, and Eagle Road. And I usually reject Eagle Road entirely because the traffic is too queued there. Also, the road goes from 3 lanes. 1 lane is almost useless. The center lane, because it's a turn lane, and collapses into 2-lane roads at either end. Could the engineer address himself to that and see whether this is something that could be done to improve the circulation within Havertown itself? Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything?
Rick Fuller, 159 Bewley Road and 101 Tenby Road. March of 2015, this board, 9-0 vote, granted me a subdivision for the property at 101 Tenby Road. All the commissioners signed off on the subdivision plans. Township manager signed off on the plans. They were submitted to the county, stamped, hand-backed into this township. Then began to get building permits. There was a stipulation in there that I could only build 1 house on the lots. There was a deed restriction in my deed, and I could only build 1 house on the 2 lots unless the court said I could build the 2nd house. Okay, nowhere in that deed anywhere did it mention. Nowhere in the resolution you guys wrote was it anywhere written that if the judge said I could only build 1 house, then the subdivision just wipes itself away. That was never mentioned. That's just ludicrous. I got permission to build a house on the 1 lot, paid my fees the entire way through, road opening permits, subdivision permits, grading permits, had all my inspections, passed my final inspection. 44 days ago now, we agreed to found a buyer, and it's under agreement. Approximately 8 days ago, Judge Green said that we can only, at the time, only build one house on the 2 lots. It's currently under appeal. Obviously, we're appealing that decision. Nowhere in his decision did he say the subdivision disappears and this becomes one property. The day after the motion, excuse me, the day after the decision was handed down, the plaintiff's attorney gave a copy to the township. And Lori contacted my attorney saying, we're not going to give you a UNO for the house that you're ready to sell unless you give both lots to the new buyer. How is that even logical? I mean, I need to know this. Settlement is tomorrow, and as of right now, I still do not have a UNO on the property. All inspections are passed. I honestly don't know what to say here. This is just insane. I mean, Zach Spiker, the new head basketball coach for Drexel men's basketball, he's the buyer of my home. They've hired counsel. No one knows what to do here. No one's given us any answers. I mean, my attorney's been in contact with members of the township, and we're not getting any answers. We have settlement tomorrow. There's absolutely no reason to hold up this UNO. I mean, I'm in violation of contract if for absolutely no reason. I want to know where the township has a right to tell me I have to give both of my lots. It's still currently 2 properties. I have 2 folio numbers. Can I have a little more time on this? I mean, this is my life we're talking about here. I have extensive loans on this property which need to be paid off. My whole entire life savings is tied up in this lot. I mean, it took a couple months to find this buyer. If this buyer walks away, I'm in financial ruins. And over what? I understand I can't build a second house right now. I'm not asking the township to go against the judge's decision and please let me build a house. I'm asking just let me sell the house I built, the house you guys let me build. I'm down to like 13 hours now, 14 hours till we have settlement. I still don't know. I still don't have a UNO in my hand. I don't know what to say.
Can I ask a question? I'm just curious. I wasn't on the board at the time the subdivision was approved, but at the time the subdivision was approved, was it known by this board that there was in fact deed restriction on the lot? That it only
Yes, it was.
Was known by this
It was
board?
approved with the deed restriction, and the provision
For only
was
one house?
only one house could be built.
Of a certain
Unless the judge says I could build a second house.
on a certain size lot, though,
Interrupt
right?
for a second. I'm sorry.
On a
Can I
certain
interrupt?
size.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
Mr. Holmes. Because there is pending litigation in this matter, I'm going to request that the board refrain from offering any more comment. And if you'd like to go into executive session, I'd suggest that someone make a motion to do
I
the
make a
same.
motion, we go in executive session.
Second.
I mean, make one more comment. I mean, I'm like out of time here. My life is on hold literally, and that's.
Will you make one more comment, and then, that's it?
I mean, yeah.
Thank you. We'll see, if you want to have a seat.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a second to go into executive session?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, then we'll recess for executive session. Mr. Fuller, thank you very much for your questions. I'm going to turn it over to Kelly, our legal advisor.
Mr. Fuller, thank you for your comments. Because this matter is currently under litigation, I'm going to ask that the board refrain from addressing any of the issues at this time. I believe that your legal counsel has been in contact with my office, and the matters will resolve through the judicial system. There's nothing else that the board can do at this time. I mean, the board would have no authority at this point to grant the UNO. The proper an appeal of the zoning officer's decision has to go to the zoning hearing board. So there's actually, this board currently has no authority to issue that CNO.
People could just make up any reason they want to not give somebody UNO, make them take it to court. This is insane.
We appreciate that, Mr. Fuller. Unfortunately, we can't make any other comments at this time. Thank you, sir. I understand, sir. New business, gentlemen?
We in the new business?
Yes, sir.
I don't have anything.
Anyone has any new business? Any other business? Emilio?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. As the chief stated, it was a very tough week for this nation. But what was interesting today, I watched this African-American woman, a 37-year-old woman, who, her name was Shantima Taylor, who praised the Dallas police officers because when the shooting started, they threw themselves over this woman who was shot and wounded. They put their lives on the line. They said nothing was going to happen to her. And I just want to say that was, it's just what they do. That's what police do. And it's been a tough year, tough week, tough 8 years. I never thought I'd see relations get so bad. I actually thought they would come together. And unless this nation comes together, we're really doomed. But it's people like Ms. Taylor who give praise to the police when they do put their lives on the line, and they did. And I also saw some video which I thought was disgraceful on how Philadelphia police were treated over the weekend, and I have to hand it to them. They handled it professionally. Certainly, people have a right to protest. There's no doubt about it. You think you were wronged, then you can protest. That's our First Amendment rights. But, and quite frankly, if any police officer did anything wrong, they must pay the price as well, and that's in our laws as well. But I think we have to let the process take place, and investigations are going on, and to see what happened. I just pray for this nation. I think I just don't like what I'm seeing, and I think, as the Reverend said, I mean, we need to look at each other and look at the people across from us and just understand that our hometown is the earth. That's our hometown. It's not Haverford Town, it's not Philadelphia, it's not Dallas. We live on this planet. And I'm just stunned and I'm not even hopeful. That's it. That's all I have. Oh, one other thing. I'm sorry, Larry. I'm sorry. Two things, actually. One, we're going to be painting the lines on Westchester Pike, do not block the box. Are those lines going to be painted next week, or?
The signs are up at the intersections, I believe, of Glendale on the Pike and Glengarry on the Pike. And then when we have the opportunity, there'll be additional line painting as well.
Okay, which is absolutely
But it is
needed.
enforceable now. The signs are up. PennDOT has given us approval for those intersections.
Good.
Therefore.
Good,
And the
thank you.
police- And the police have been policing those two intersections.
Thank you. And the other problem that we're having in the First Ward, I don't know if any other commissioners experience this right now. I don't know if, Dan, your ward is. We're having a terrible rodent problem in some of the streets, even across the Pike on, what's the street that Marshall is on? Briarwood. Briarwood, Walnut Hill Lane, Glengarry, Greenbrier. I don't know what's causing it. I don't think the township knows what's causing it at this point, but it seems pretty significant at this time. So are you getting any calls, Dan, or no?
Nothing.
Well, let's just...
We have had multiple calls in that area, and our health department has responded to each and every one of them, as well as our working with our animal control. The challenging part, our public works department, when we receive a problem area such as that, we will bait our storm sewers in the area, which we're licensed to do that. And then our health department, the confusing thing is residents have the understanding that we become exterminators. The township, the government does not do that. We'll go on to assess and see if we can identify what the root of the problem is. In most cases, it's residents. We do some educational information for residents and leave brochures where there may be, for example, compost pile that hasn't been moved for a number of years, high grass, improper lids on trash cans, and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think we also have to say that if you have, I remember, Larry, you saying this a couple
Bird
years ago,
feeders.
bird feeders. if anyone, at least in my ward, has a bird feeder, you should get rid of it, especially in the streets that are experiencing this problem. Get rid of your bird feeders, and we have to eliminate every possible cause at this time to stop it.
Yeah, the challenging portion of that area, usually when we see these type of complaints, we have a spike, there's usually major construction in the area, and there hasn't been any construction in the past several months anywhere in the Westgate Hills area. So, but we are, our health department, Nancy, as well as the animal control, are actively working along with our public works to address as much as we possibly can on the government's part.
Can we recommend how to deal with it, like trap-wise, or?
And that's what we do, yeah. We recommend, and that's what Nancy, our health inspector, does.
Okay, thank you.
You're
That's all I
welcome.
have.
Mr. McCluskey?
Sure. First, I want to thank all the volunteers that were involved in the 4th of July activities at Paddock Park, Murwood Park, and the parade that the Oakmont Fire Department had, and also the activities of the Oakmont Fire Department in providing some much-needed water relief for the kids and some adults, too, during some of those activities. I also want to just touch, as Commissioner D'Amelio did, on some of the events the last week. It seems like it's a recurring issue where we almost feel compelled to address it and offer our apologies and our sorrow for different areas of the country. And as the chief said, and something I'm very grateful for, our police department does seem to have a very good relationship with the community that it serves. There's open dialogue. I went to an event at the Giant a few months ago where there was, communication between the police and its citizenry. I think one of the things we're seeing is that it's apparent that that relationship between police and the citizens that are served does not exist necessarily in other areas. And it's unfortunate, and it's led to significantly tragic events and loss of life. There's so much discussion on social media and so much discussion in the public about these events, and I just want to note, that supporting the police and supporting some of the premises behind peaceful protest are not exactly contradictory. You can do both. You can try to understand the police's perspective and the sadness that comes from the unnecessary shooting of 5 people and injuring of countless others for doing nothing other than their jobs. And you can try to understand the perspectives of the African American community who watch videos that, certainly are still under investigation, but are nonetheless disturbing at the loss of life. And you don't have to say that anybody in these protests, everyone is necessarily saying something positive, and you don't have to say that all police are good or all police are bad. It's human nature. But you can, and it's possible to both support the police and support the notion that police in communities such as the ones in Louisiana and Minnesota need to do a better job of trying to communicate with the residents that they serve. And as I said, I thank the chief for his comments earlier. I think it truly is important, the relationship that our department has with the citizenry here, and I thank him for his efforts to do that, and I thank the citizens who have come forward to show their appreciation to the Haverford Police, both to them and to various members of this board.
Thank you. Mr. Siegel?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
Just a quick College Avenue bridge closure update. When Commissioner McCluskey and I had a public meeting back in June, there were a couple issues that were outstanding. One, from PennDOT's perspective, was to try to get the right-of-way from SEPTA, and apparently that right-of-way has been resolved. That right-of-way issue has been resolved, so that was the last hurdle, and it looks like the contract's going to be let here in the next 45 to 60 days, so I would expect the construction would begin sometime in September, October timeframe. There were 2 concerns that were raised at the public meeting. One was the lack of a sidewalk. There are currently 2 sidewalks on College Avenue Bridge, and new construction contemplates no sidewalks but a 5-foot wide shoulder. So we've gone, and the other issue is there's no, if you've ever gone over that bridge, you know that some drivers actually sit on the crest of the bridge for fear that people will come over the top of the bridge and rear end them because the light is red. So we've gone back to PennDOT specifically. I contacted PennDOT Secretary Leslie Richards about these two issues. Number one, about the importance of having a sidewalk, that it's essential that we have a sidewalk on at least one side of the bridge, which is possible in lieu of the 5-foot wide shoulder, and also that PennDOT consider adding some kind of signaling on the bridge prior to the light, so drivers get a warning that a red light is upcoming. So I've sent that email. I've gone back and forth with the secretary, and she said she would look at the issue and get back to us. And so we're waiting on that decision. But we're hopeful that we can make those two safety adjustments to the bridge. And if we do, I think we're going to really have a great end product. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Gentili, thank you. I just want to applaud the efforts of the South Ardmore Betterment Alliance, who put on, once again, a terrific July 4th celebration last week in Elwell Field. As I've done for a number of years now, I handed out a couple of first-place ribbons that cost me hundreds of votes of disappointed children's parents everywhere. So it was a really, really nice day and a nice event, and it all happens through some extraordinary volunteer efforts. And also our fire department and our police department who helped with the parade as well. So thank you to all of them. And I just ask everybody to pray for our country right now. I think it's going through a lot of terrible, it's going through some introspection. I think it's going through some terrible things, and I'd like to think we won't have to deal with this again, but I'm afraid there's more of this to come before we can resolve it all. But my thoughts and prayers are to the families of everybody affected by the terrible events of last week, and I reiterate the comments of Commissioner McCluskey and every commissioner about the extraordinary job that our police force does in interacting with our community and making people feel secure and making people feel that they are all important and all citizens here. And I applaud Chief Viola for his comments tonight, and I send my sympathies to him and to all of his colleagues dealing with the loss of police life. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, basically, I wanted to mention about the Grangefield, Penfield Civic Association. They had a new group this year that Chris Connell worked very hard on putting this group together. And to be honest with you, I was amazed. They had probably 15 to 20 new volunteers, all with Penfield Civic Association shirts and all. And they did a fabulous job. I thought it was a great turnout, probably 150 people there for, it was a Sunday a Monday we had it on, and a lot of people were down the shore. And again, Brookline Fire Company, I believe they've been coming down there. I think it was their 71st year. So those men and women, they support the children with rides throughout the neighborhoods. And also, like I said, what Chris did, putting this together, he worked very hard. And also, I want to thank the Penfield Civic Association for their support for the Brookline Fire Company. They supported him that day, and they were very happy to have him there. And everything worked out. It was a perfect day. And as far as Mr. Viola and Chief Pettin, they put a great force together. We have a good force here. I'm not going to say you don't have anything to worry about, because you never know what's around the corner. And we've witnessed that in several areas. And it's a shame, but I'm sure our force is ready to anything that comes along. And thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to offer my thanks to the Hilltop Civic Association and their volunteer corps. I think Mrs. Cipolla is here. Again, it's my favorite event of the year. The kids decorate their bicycle, and Bonaire generally lets us use their apron as a staging area and walk down to Steel Field and Hilltop Field, where the Civic Association provides all sorts of treats and races and prizes. Mrs. Cipolla, this year we were blessed to have 3 veteran volunteers there with us, two surviving members of the Battle of the Bulge who led us in the Pledge of Allegiance and taught the kids exactly what it's like to, they're the guys that protected our freedom that we protect and allow people to protest such as happened with the police thing. I'd also like to thank both the Bonaire and Manoa Fire Companies for participating in the parade, as well as our police department. And I'd like to finally congratulate the two young men that were promoted tonight, Jim Reynolds and Jim Kelly. I think they're a great symbol of the type of police department that we have. They're great young men. I know them both. Lieutenant Kelly lives in my ward. Jim Reynolds is a former fireman at Manoa with me, very participating there. If that's the type of officers that we have, and they are truly symbolic of our police department, then we are a leg up in other communities. And as Chief echoed in his sentiments, and also I thought the Reverend in his opening prayer gave a great dedication and reflection upon the events of the last week. So that's all I have. Thank you.
I think the Reverend has broken a record staying around this long, too. Thank you for staying around.
Thank you, Reverend. Before I adjourn, just like to thank the members of the board, give me the opportunity to chair the meeting, and thanks for being easy on me this evening. Kelly, thank you for your guidance. And at this point, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.